Alright, so I just woke up from my screening of No Time to Die, so I guess I can talk about it. I know absolutely nothing about James Bond. In fact, this is the first James Bond movie that I've sat all the way through. So going into this, I really didn't have any expectations. I was just sort of watching it so I could review it. So yeah, really just my bottom line thoughts. I thought this movie was incredibly polished and incredibly expensive, but ultimately way too flabby and bogged down by some pretty boring material. I think about 50% of this movie is really entertaining and really impressive action spectacle, whereas the other half is very slow, very uninteresting dialogue. The dialogue itself isn't necessarily the issue, but it's more so just all exposition, and that ultimately gets pretty exhausting when you're 6 MacGuffins deep and you still have no idea where the story's going. This movie is really carried by a really impressive score by Hans Zimmer. He pays homage to the old 60s motifs and themes while still maintaining that 60s vibe, which really clashes with the modern style really well. Even if some of the music falls into the category of stock Christopher Nolan type soundtrack. Rami Malek and Léa Seydoux are really two standouts in this film. I think their performances build on their characters so subtly to the point where you're getting character development without dialogue or even exposition. It's just all within the performance, and I really enjoyed that. Daniel Craig also does a good job as James Bond. I think he does the character a lot of justice as he closes out this final victory lap as the character. And overall, this movie was fine. I mean, there's really not much more to say about it. It got just as much right as it did wrong, and ultimately, I don't know if I'm ever going to be revisiting it. I think the first 25 minutes and the climax are really enjoyable and really impressive, but I feel like that midsection would be really hard to get through on repeat viewings. So yeah, if I'm going to get into the problems that I have with this movie, we're going to have to go into spoilers, so skip to this timestamp that's on screen right now to avoid spoilers. And yeah, there you go, there's your warning. 3, 2, 1. Going into this movie, I actually didn't know that James Bond movies connected as closely as they do. Like, I sort of just expected them to have the same characters, but it's more of like a serialized type of thing. But no, in this movie, there's like tons of characters from the last movie and predetermined relationships. So right at the start of this movie, I was really confused, and that's not a fault of the movie. It's my fault for not watching any of the other James Bond movies before seeing this one, but that's just my own fault, and that's probably why I found this movie to be so hard to follow at times. But at the same time, that's also just a fault on the movie's writing. There are so many plots going on, interweaving at the same time, and so many different schemes interacting with each other, and 6 different MacGuffins. It just becomes really convoluted and really hard to follow. Like, okay, so Rami Malek wants to spread nanobot herpes to everyone in the world, but it's genetically selective, so you can use it to assassinate people, because the virus will just keep spreading from person to person until it hits the right person and then kill them. So, I mean, I guess that's a neat concept for, like, a pulp novel, and I guess that is what James Bond was first adapted from, but I don't know, it's just a really convoluted plot device, and I think that they could have gone for something much simpler, and it wouldn't have bogged the midsection of this movie down so much with people explaining everything that's going on and explaining what everything does, because a lot of this needs explaining. Bond is absolutely a high concept franchise, there's no doubt about that, even I can tell from not seeing any of the other movies, but still, the term high concept commonly relates to more simplistic themes that a blockbuster audience can follow and consume at a more surface level. When you start getting into the exposition of everything and coming up with these high-tech concepts that take a lot of explaining, the audience isn't going to latch onto that as much because, oh, I have to turn my brain on now. That's not an insult to movie theater audiences because I do it too. I'm not like a total snob. I like want to watch a movie where, oh hey, cool, stuff blow up, turn my brain off, and I can watch it. And that's kind of what I was expecting this movie to be. And when it wasn't, it's not that it was like, oh, too artistic. No, come on now. The actual content itself was uninteresting in comparison. And I feel like that this same story, even as convoluted as it is, could be trimmed down a bit, because this movie is insanely long. It is incredibly long. And I think if you could trim it down from 160 minutes to say like 140, 130, then this movie would be in pretty good shape. So if you follow me on Letterboxd, you might have already read my review for this movie, assuming this video goes up the day the movie releases. But when I was writing my initial notes for this video in my notepad before I started filming, I wrote in my notes, Billy Relish song good. And it is. It's actually a very good song. And I think it fits the Bond tone really well. It goes with this like grand, epic orchestral piece with Billie Eilish's vocals. It's a pretty good tune, I'm not gonna lie. Also, that prologue sequence is like long as hell. It's like 25 minutes into the movie when the opening credits finally start. And I mean, I guess that is forgivable because it's an incredibly long movie. I don't know, that sort of did a good job of setting the stakes, you know, because it takes a long time to set this stuff up. And when it is set up, you feel like you are familiar enough with the story as it stands to continue on this new branch. So I haven't talked a lot about the action yet, despite this being an action movie. And so I guess I'll go ahead and talk about it. So the action in this movie is pretty damn good. It's incredibly cohesive compared to a lot of modern blockbusters. No matter the space, which there's quite a few spaces in which James Bond gets into fights in this movie, no matter the space, the director, Cary Joji Fukunaga, actually takes extreme care to keep a continuity in the geography of the scene. So, for example, there's the scene towards the end of the film where James Bond is fighting bad guys while scaling the length of a large pool. And there's separate corridors branching off, and it's quite a quick cutting scene. But even so, there's always the continuity of where the characters were standing when it cut to a different angle. And that makes it way more immersive because I can name a million instances in a million movies where that little continuity is off. Cuts to one shot and they're suddenly looking a different way, or they're 5 feet further, and it just pulls you right out of the movie. That could just be me nitpicking because I can be a nitpicky bastard sometimes, but this movie does it really well. Ultimately, this is kind of the weirdest case of style over substance that I've ever seen because the style is so incredible and it works so well with the Bond format. And there's parts of this movie that feel like an Uncharted level. You know, it draws heavy inspiration from Christopher Nolan and even like Indiana Jones to create these sort of grand spaces and like globe-trotting adventures. And it's really cool. There is a very palpable sense of scale there. But with everything in between, I found myself checking my watch and switching positions because I was uncomfortable. I was conscious of how my body was feeling because I just was not invested in this movie at all. So by the end of the film, when, major spoiler coming up, when Bond dies, I didn't really feel anything. I'm sorry, I just didn't. And of course that could be a product of the fact that I have not seen the 4 other films that Daniel Craig has done as Bond, which I'll admit that's probably a big contributor. Yeah, the fact that even with this 2-hour and 45-minute movie, I couldn't be attached to these characters enough because it doesn't feel natural. None of it feels natural. There's no real brevity to it. It just feels like a bunch of characters descending a checklist. You know, it just feels like, oh, we have this list of plot points. We have to go here, now we have to go here, now we have to go here. None of it feels fluid. None of it feels real. It just feels, again, like they're going down a checklist. Frankly, I'm not going to be revisiting No Time to Die anytime soon. A solid 50 minutes to an hour of this movie was incredible, but then there is the remaining time that I would honestly rather put on anything else. There is an undeniable voice and an undeniable vision here, but ultimately, I just don't think it works with this level of grim, dark elements. Their decision to go for a more gritty, grounded world for these modern James Bond movies, which, to my recollection of the little of the earlier Bond films that I've seen, they're not exactly realistic. But when you have such kind of outlandish, pulpy subjects as nanobot viruses that kill dictators, it's a little strange. It's a little goofy to have this grimdark, ultra hyper real setting with such a goofy concept. It doesn't mesh well. And that's something that I think the first Kingsman movie got right, and having this absolutely obscene concept about satellite towers making people hurt each other in a very carefree environment with very comic book like tone. It's not something that I really like. I've seen something like this similar in something like Mission Impossible Fallout, which I think does an incredibly good job of balancing the slow character drama with the action set pieces. But this movie doesn't do it as well, because not only is it like a half hour longer, but it's also just not as engaging. Because Mission Impossible Fallout has something as simple as, oh, we need to go here and get these 3 nuclear cores, but there's also a mystery that will lead us to that end goal. Only with No Time to Die, it's way more convoluted than that. If this movie didn't have such a serious tone, I feel like it would actually improve. The visual style draws a lot of inspiration from Christopher Nolan and Denis Villeneuve, and I think it works really well and manages to make something unique despite it being very inspired. So yeah, I don't know what Bond is going to do next. I'm definitely going to watch all of the previous Daniel Craig films in the series, at least. I did get the big 24-disc box set with every single movie, so who knows, maybe I'll make a video where I talk about everything in the future if I ever get the time. But yeah, I think that's about all I have to say about No Time to Die. If I had to rate it, I guess I'd give it a 6 out of 10. I mean, that's what I gave it on Letterboxd. It's probably closer to a 5 than a 7, but yeah, I'm comfortable with the 6. So yeah, that's the review. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm doing something a little different here. This actually isn't the microphone I'm using. I have a clip mic hooked up right there because, well, I forgot a goddamn audio interface for this, so I'm gonna have to wait even longer before I can start using this. But we got a new setup going, put a lot of money into this, and I think, I mean, you know, it's got a bit of a hokey feel, but I like the hokey feel, you know what I mean? So yeah, I got a lot of projects coming up, man. I got a lot of projects coming up. There may be a longer time between uploads simply because the 2 big projects that I have going on right now, one of them is a little more ambitious than what I typically do, would be a little longer, and the other one is quite literally the biggest thing I have ever done. So, yeah, I have no idea when that one's gonna come out. I could not tell you, and I'm not gonna try and make any guesses. But yeah, thank you for watching my video. Be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment, check me out on Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, listen to my podcast, listen to my music on SoundCloud, dude. That'd be a double whammy if I was a video essayist and a SoundCloud rapper. Jesus, God strike me dead. Strike me dead. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in the next video.